Today's interview is super special for me because I'm bringing on a Boise State alum who had quite the career in the NBA, but his journey to get there was super unique. Today, he's going to be sharing life lessons. He's going to be talking about his NBA career, talking about the players he's guarded, the players he played with, his mentors, and who he mentored. All sorts of stories today on the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time!
This is the Gametime Guru Podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens. What's going on, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru Podcast. You guys know by now, 4 years running. My name is Shane Larson, host of the show. We really appreciate everybody who has tuned in, been supporting the show since the beginning. We've reached 88 different countries, 60,000 downloads, and it continues to grow. So we appreciate everybody for the support. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the podcast on any of your favorite platforms. You can see it here in the video. We've got it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, every single podcast platform you can even find it on. Go subscribe, give me a review if you can, and share it with your friends and family. Now, listen, guys, the show wouldn't be possible without my sponsors, 208 Printing. If you guys want anything done for your clothing, your brand, anything, if you have shirts, hats, anything, you want to be a walking billboard, Guru Vision t-shirts, whatever, go to madeby208.com. They'll get you taken care of for your business or your brand. 208 Printing, the title sponsor of the podcast. Now, today, very special episode for me. I am super honored and blessed to bring on our guest here, an individual who dominated at Boise State, but also played over 540 games in the National Basketball Association. His name is Chris Childs. Chris, thanks so much for joining the show, man.
Hey, Shane, it's my pleasure, man. Glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, man, we're super excited to have you here. You're a legend here in the Valley, but a lot of people that watched you in the NBA didn't realize that you came from Boise. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that really quickly. You know, being a Boise State alum myself, just growing up here, you know, your name is there in the realm of Boise State athletes. I mean, the ones that made it to the next level, and there's very few of them that have had the career like you've had. Talk to us about your experience at Boise and what took you to Boise, Idaho out of high school.
Well, initially, coming out of Bakersfield, I was highly recruited. I could have went to a lot of the big Pac-10 schools, which is not the Pac-10 anymore. But I was going to go to one of those schools. But coming from Bakersfield and being from the inner city, the hood per se, when it was time to take the SAT and ACT test, I thought it was biased towards minorities because we didn't see and deal in the same life of everyone else. So it was very hard for us to consume a lot of the questions that they presented to us to take those tests. So I kind of, boycotted per se the SAT. I had a lot of the student union at our school. I had them boycotted, and a lot of the colleges ran away from that because they thought I was being militant. And so when it came time to finally take the test, my dad said, well, if you're going to do this, stick by your guns, but you're going to eventually have to take the test. And by the time I did take it, there was only 4 schools to choose from because I didn't want to go to those other schools who left and didn't offer me a scholarship anymore. So it was SMU, Fresno State, UNLV, and Boise State. Me being familiar with who Bobby Dye at the time, Boise was in the running. So I went to SMU, was getting ready to sign with them, but while I was on the plane, they got the death penalty. I think they got suspended or they got on probation or something for like 4 years, couldn't play in the big tournament. So I left there. I was on my way back. I was going to go to Las Vegas and sign with UNLV, but they ended up signing Greg Anthony and telling me that Greg Anthony was going to start And I remember that I, pretty much beat up on Greg Anthony when he was at Portland State, because he went to Portland State before UNLV. And so I was like, nah, I want to start. That's my whole goal. And so Bobby Dye coached at Cal State Bakersfield. And so he called me and had me come down there. And once I got to the city, and the guys that picked me up, I remember like it was yesterday, was Eric Hayes, Coach Ryder, and I think it was Kelvin Sampson and Jeff Kelly, our center. And so when I met those guys and saw the city, because I've always liked the change of climate, the cold and the warm, and just saw how beautiful the city of Boise was with the mountains in the background. And at the time, the people that were there, when I walked on the campus, I said, this is going to be my school of choice. And when Coach Dye said that I would have an opportunity to start right away, it wasn't going to be given to me. I had to earn it. Boise was my school of choice.
Wow. What a journey there that I didn't even know existed, man. Like, that's awesome. This is the coolest thing, because you get to hear the stories. That's the whole point of this show, is I want to hear the behind the scenes stuff. So you get to Boise, it was a roundabout way to get there. And
yes,
and you actually like the city. Talk to us about that too. Like, you've become kind of part of the culture here at Boise State, for those who understand the history of the school and whatnot. But what was your favorite part about Boise? Because from someone like myself, I'll be 100% real, Chris. I'm born and raised here, been here my whole entire life. So for, 32 plus years, I'm here, and I get so mad. Sometimes I'll say stuff about like, oh, I hate Boise because it's so cold or this and that. Like, what was your favorite part about the city coming from California?
I just, where I'm from, we have the mountains. So when I got there and I saw the mountains, I fell in love with it. The cold didn't bother me, because my junior year of high school, I went to school with my cousin in Richland, Washington. So that part of it didn't bother me. I love to fish. I love to hunt. I love the golf. So I had all three of those things. And, I'm a person that always roots for the underdog. I don't pick the favorites ever. And so I knew it was going to be a challenge, and I love challenges. I knew we were going to be the underdog, and it was my goal to because the football team was already on the map, whether it's for their play or the blue turf.
Right.
So I wanted to put Boise State basketball on the map, and so that people after me, which eventually happened after I left Boise, two guys from my high school end up coming to Boise State, Archie Wright and Arthur Charles. They followed me. So the plan worked, that I was able to, not only by myself, but with my teammates, with the city, the fans, all the teachers, all the people that helped my stay there be a real easy transition, put Boise State on the map.
That's what I'm talking about, man. That's so cool. It's so cool to hear it from someone like yourself too. Just like, yeah, it's so awesome. I got to ask this question on behalf of my uncle. I told you before we started recording, my uncle wanted to ask some questions. Here's one. What was your favorite memory of Coach Bobby Dye?
Oh gosh. I tell this story to the kids I train. We were in Reno, and we got to the gym. There was no balls, and the lights were out. We had a little bit of light, and we had a 2-hour practice. Coach, and then we didn't have any balls, so we had to act like we were passing. And the funny part about it, one time he said, "Chris, that was a lazy pass." I'm like, "Coach, we don't have a damn ball. What are you talking about?" "Well, you have to act like you have a ball." And so, yeah, when you get older, you realize I realized what he was saying. It was attention to detail. Act like you're out there playing, even if you're not. If your arms are slow through the motion, then I understand he was saying it was a lazy pass. So Coach Dye and Coach Jensen, Coach Ryder, Stewie, the trainers, I'm forgetting our our school advisor, shoot, they hopefully you guys forgive me. Everyone was a part of that process, but that story with Coach Dye having a practice in the dark with no balls for 2 hours was a classic.
That's awesome. Actually, yeah, it definitely doesn't, you don't forget those types of memories. You know what I mean? That actually sounds hilarious. I guess it makes sense too. As a former boxer myself, I mean, shadow boxing, coaches used to get mad. You're not hitting anybody, but like if you were lazy, they would tell you stuff. And you're like, dude, there's no opponent. Similar concept, but it's just funny because it's about a basketball. Like you're doing things slow motion.
It's the same thing because I boxed, and if you leave that jab out there too long, you're not covered up with the offhand, or you're not moving your head after you jab and leaving that head right there. I get that. So that's why I don't box anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's what they always say. What did Max Holloway just say? You have one brain, take care of it. Yeah. That's also why I don't box anymore.
Perfect. Put it on a t-shirt.
There you go. So Chris, you go from Boise into the NBA, and you had quite a career in the NBA. Like I said,
well, I went to the CBA first.
So you went to CBA. Okay, talk to us about the transition into the CBA before heading up to the NBA.
Well, it was difficult because, at Boise State, my junior year, I was one of the best guards to come out the West. I was in Sports Illustrated, projected to be a late first-round pick, and had a lot of success at Boise, but ended up not getting drafted. Went through a transition in the CBA. It's a different type of league, having 2 kids at the time, third on the way, making $500 before taxes. So it was a difficult time. Shout out to Carla Childs, my ex-wife, my kids, Jesse, Jenny, Jay, Amia, Crystal, Corey, stuck by me. And if it wasn't for them being that support system, I don't know if I would have continued playing. But it was something that I dreamt of and knew that was going to be my path of being either professional basketball player or baseball player. And so the first few years were difficult. I got traded to a lot of different teams in the CBA for whatever reason. I'm not sure. It was just a different type of league back then. But I was lucky. I remember the turning point was when I was in Quad City, Iowa, playing for the Quad City Thunder. And, just like most young men and a lot of people, to come out of Boise, there's not a lot to do. So you go to parties, you drink out of kegs and tailgate and all kind of stuff. And so I consumed alcohol at a high level. And the turning point was when I woke up, and hopefully my son doesn't, get mad at me for telling this story, but he was asleep, and I woke up, I was at the edge of his bed, sleep as well. I always checked in on my kids when they were younger, and I still do to this day. But at that time, I fell asleep on the edge of his bed. I missed practice. And, that's when Carla, my ex-wife, the coach, and then rest in peace, Ann DeLong, who's the owner, who stuck by me and believed in me, asked me, did I think I needed help? And a lot of times people think it's just the drinking part. That's just one of the symptoms, but I didn't know how to live life on life terms to be able to separate the two and not over divulging in alcohol and not having there's no such thing as a casual drinker for me. So Ann DeLong, like I said, rest in peace, one of the best owners at any level, flew me on her jet down in Houston. I went to the John Lucas Center for recovery. And he taught me that there's different levels of alcoholics. Just because you don't consume alcohol, you can have an alcohol mentality, behavior. And so that was my whole problem. So being there, going through that, seeing the different dynamics of what people go through on a daily basis when they have an addiction, and being able to separate the addiction, the alcohol itself, and being a professional basketball player, I had to get myself in order. So I ended up staying with John for approximately a year and a half, working out in the summer times, going to meetings. And then I ended up trying out for his team, the San Antonio Spurs. Thought I made the team. Everybody else on the team thought I made the team. David Robinson, Terry Cummings, Willie Anderson, Alvin Robertson, all these guys were excited for me, like, you're going to make it. The last preseason game, where the plan lands back in San Antonio, he calls me to the front and he cut me.
Wow.
So right then and there, I made the decision that I would never leave it into anyone else's hands for my success. And so that following year, went back to the Quad City Thunder. And before the season started, I went back home and I didn't hang out. I lived in the gym, weight room, on the basketball court. Like, I had a buddy of mine, Jose Wesley, rest in peace. He had the key to the gym. I would literally sleep in the gym every day and wake up at 2 a.m, shoot, run, go to sleep, wake up at 6, shoot, run. They open the gym at 9. I would get up with the guys, shoot, run. And so I wasn't going to leave it in anyone else's hands for my success. And so when that season started, I had never been all league. I was on like the all defensive team, like third team. But my goal was to win the championship, win the MVP, and win the MVP of the playoffs. And I won all three, and we won the championship. And from then on, that's when Willis Reed gave me a call and gave me my first shot with the Nets in the NBA.
Chris, that's such a cool story. Like, I never knew that. And that's why I appreciate you opening up about the whole thing. You know, what people don't realize is, like, you know, the CBA, for example, what, you know, the league itself, just hearing the mental grind that it was for you, but it also was a stepping stone and a turning point for not only your career as a basketball player, but your career as a man, right? Just as a human being. That story right there, it's crazy. And you know, I do feel, and I'm curious your thoughts here. I do feel that, like, the G League, for example, and some of these, you know, they call them lower tier leagues, but they're stepping stones. These are developmental leagues. I do feel that there is a place for them. Do you feel that, like, that was overall a positive? I mean, obviously, hearing your story, like, it was a turning point for you, but it was really hard for you as well. Do you feel it's a positive thing to have a developmental league here in the United States?
Yeah, of course. You know, everybody's not ready for the NBA, and what people fail to realize is that when you go to that level, even the CBA, the D League, overseas, the NBA, at the most in a 24-hour day, you work out 4 hours. Whether it's 2 hours on the court with your team, hour or so in the weight room, then you get a massage, getting the steam or whatever. But now, what do you do with the other 20 hours of your day? That's where people get lost at, and they lose track, and they get caught up in other things other than basketball. So that's the professional side, the business side that a lot of young players, even myself, when I first came out, wasn't aware of, is that there's other entities underneath that umbrella, which is the NBA team that you're responsible for, that you're representing. And a lot of young kids, 18, 19-year-olds coming to the league, fail to realize. And what the CBA teaches you is that they're all good players. You know, there's no bad players in the CBA, the one I were playing. And looking at the G League, D League, there's no bad players in any league to me. Because if you're a professional, you're good at something.
Right.
You just have to you have to find out what the teams are looking for you to come into that situation. For me, when I was coming out, I knew that I can stand on my defense, that I had NBA caliber defense, that I can shoot the ball, but I had to learn how to run a ball club, because I wasn't only responsible for myself. I was responsible for the other four that was on the court, the other guys coming off the bench, the guys on the other team, what they do well. So I had to become a student of the game and learn how to run a ball club. And so for these young guys in college, even in high school, it starts now, understand what your role is on any given team. Some pieces are bigger than others, but to make a puzzle, you need all pieces. So why not be a piece of the puzzle? Whether it's a guy that you can be the best leader on the bench, but you have a spot, because what happens when you show that type of teamwork and unselfishness, it gives you an opportunity after basketball where that franchise that you play for will look at that film and look at that guy on the end of the bench cheering for everybody, patting the guy on the backside, giving him motivation speeches. They want that guy to be a part of the ultimate business side of basketball. And so that's what the young kids have to remember, that you might not be the star on the team, or you might not get the opportunity to play in every game or some games, but there's nothing wrong with being in upper management as well.
Right. Man, man, that's super cool, man. It's super cool to hear your insight there. Now, Chris, you go from the CBA, you built your foundation, going over to the Nets. This is a question I always want to hear the insight from those who've been there. You know, the biggest transition, because some people will say, like, in the developmental leagues or even smaller colleges, like some developmental leagues, those games in some arenas are less than what you'd see in a high school game, depending on where you're coming from in the country. And I mean, sometimes they're smaller than collegiate games. It really just depends on where you're watching them at. Then you go into the NBA. What was the biggest transition? What was the biggest transition, whether it be difficulty or just an aha, like, whoa moment for you going from that level to now you're in the big leagues now?
Well, luckily for me, when I got to the NBA, I was 25. So I was a man. I wasn't, a young kid. And so when I got there, the main thing was every night you're going up against the best at every position. And I didn't only have to guard ones, I had to guard two. So one night I'll have Tim Hardaway, Allen Iverson, Rod Strickland, Terrell Brandon. And then the next night I got to guard two. So I got to guard Michael, Kobe, Scottie Pippen, Mitch Richmond. The names go on and on. So I go from guarding a 6-foot point guard to a 6'8" two guard, 6'6", so I had to be ready mentally. And, I was a student of the game. I kept myself in phenomenal shape, and, the genes that I had coming from my mom and my father, I had a strong lower body that I would be able to use to my advantage. Now, you can't stop a great offensive player, but you can try to limit them as much as possible and then pray to the Father above that they have an off night. Especially going up against Michael and Kobe, those guys shoot high volume. So you just pray, like, please, God, let them have an off night tonight, because I don't want my kids to be embarrassed at school tomorrow.
Oh man, I can imagine that though. That's a lot. And I guess, like you said, every night you're going up against the best at that level. Like, everybody's good all the time, and that's how it works, I guess, for every level of sports, right? You go from middle school to high school to college, and sometimes college you're going from a JUCO to a D1 or whatever it may be, and then if you're lucky enough to go to the professional level, that's kind of how it works. And everybody gets better and better. And just naming those names off, it's a mental grind as much as it is a physical grind, I'm sure, because you have to be alert. That's crazy. The names you mentioned, I want to know, when you first got in, if there were any players on the Nets that kind of took you under their wing to kind of get you used to the NBA game that you remember.
Well, I know that when I got there, Kenny Anderson was a starter at the point guard. We became close, but I was older than him, so it was kind of difficult for him to lead per se. But I remember Rick Mahorn. We used to sit there and talk the game. David Wingate out of Georgetown. I had Vern Fleming, played in Indiana. I had Coach Paul Silas, who took me under his wing, Stan Albeck. So I had all veteran coaches, Jerry Eves. These guys were older coaches that have been in the league, players that have been in the league. And the main thing they just told me is, Chris, be yourself. Don't go up against the grain, to do what the other guys do. Do what you do best. And so at that, I wasn't hanging out. I was still sober. I was drinking. Everybody looking at me like, why is he drinking cranberry and Sprite? I said, because you don't want to see the guy that drinks the other stuff. So I'm going to stay with this. But they respected my boundaries. I set boundaries because, like I said, I was 25. I was a man, so I set boundaries and they respected them. It was a great team. We had a lot of talent. We didn't win as much, but I'll never forget the team, the guys, and the camaraderie and what I learned being a net.
That's so cool, man. It's just crazy talking to somebody who's been there though, and just hearing some of those names you're dropping. And later in the career, you go over to the Knicks, and that's where you played a few years over there with New York. A pretty good franchise, really good franchise at the time, especially like you guys were going through some peaks. Talk to me about your experience with the Knicks overall. Like, what was it like in those practices with some of the guys that you had as teammates with the Knicks? Man, tell me about those practices. We want to hear about that stuff.
Man, that year, I think that was I want to say 96, 97 season. After the 96 season, I got traded. Well, I didn't get traded. I was a free agent. And so the Knicks were in transition. So they brought over myself, Larry Johnson, and Allen Houston to make them younger, faster, more powerful. And they had already had Patrick was still there, Charles Oakley, John Starks, Charlie Ward. Yeah, so when I got there, still my style of play, they didn't have to change me. So I was already bringing that tenacity there and that dog mentality per se. But our practices were harder than the games. I mean, Jeff Van Gundy, we had to tape for shoot around. We had to tape our ankles for shoot around.
Explain the reasoning behind that though, so people can understand. Like, that's how intense it. Like, talk to us about that.
Well, what happens, like, usually in an NBA game, before the day of the game, you have a shoot around to go over the other team's plays, just to get loose, to work up a lather. And so we get there, and Jeff's mentality was, you practice how you play. And so our shoot around is not, okay, we come in and shoot, lollygag around. We go change into our practice gear, we tape, and we go all out like it's a regular practice. And I'm looking like, we have a game today. Really. He's like, that was that Pat Riley's mentality that Jeff got from Pat Riley before Pat Riley moved on to Miami. And so our practices were like slugfest. We fought each other. It was fights. It was blood. But after practice, there was no hard feelings. You would shake the guy's hand. Because I remember John and I getting to fisticuffs a couple of times. I remember Charlie and John getting into it. I remember Oak getting into it with. I mean, it was a normal day for us. It wasn't like, all right, we're mad at each other, we can't go out there and perform. We policed ourselves, and we wanted the best from each other. And if you weren't giving your best, the coach didn't have to tell you. One of the players would, because I remember the first week I was there, Oak and I Charles Oakley, just automatically became tight. We on the road together, we're playing dominoes, going to dinner. So the first week, he sees how I come to the gym, to the weight room, I go before practice and work on my game, my shots, and how I practice for the whole 2 hours, like it was nothing. And so after one practice, he said, all right, listen, I'll take care of all the big guys. You take care of all the guards. And so I was like, what do you mean? Like, if anybody gets out of hand, it's your job to take care of the guards. I'll take care of the big guys. So when any of, John wasn't practicing, I would get in his face. Charlie, didn't have to really worry about Charlie because Charlie came all the time. But when Spreewell was there, or any of those guys didn't want to practice or wasn't giving it their all, I was right in their face to let them know. And if they didn't like how I was speaking to them, then we can go in the locker room and handle our business like men, and then come back out and go to practice.
Man, I love this. This is the stuff I love as somebody, this is during the time that I was growing up. I was in elementary school. And so I remember those Knicks teams because I actually
Yeah.
I loved Spreewell. He was one of my favorite players. And so I remember you guys. That's what's so crazy to me now, like flash forward 25 years. And I'm like, holy cow. So here in the behind the scenes, that totally makes sense. So that's why you guys were so good. It was a tight knit unit. And you guys were you were dogs. And obviously, Chris, I'm sure you've talked about this a million times in your life since then. You're not scared to get tough, right? And it wasn't just with your teammates. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. But there was the altercation with Kobe. Talk to us about that. Did you and Kobe go to dinner after the game? Like, how was that whole scenario when it's been all over the place with you and him? You weren't scared of him, and I always respected that about you. Like, a lot of guys get intimidated. They'll get physical and stuff, but they got intimidated. But you weren't scared of him. You went to fists with the man. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, it's not about going out there and portraying to be a tough guy. It wasn't anything about that. I'm a firm believer that you protect yourself at all times. You defend yourself. You don't start anything, but that's what my dad told me. Don't start it, but by damn, you better finish it. And so when I'm playing the game, I don't mind the rough play, long as it stays below the shoulders. And because I've had 4 concussions, and you can really hurt yourself. 4 concussions, and I fractured my orbital bone in my right eye. So when elbows get high, I take offense to that. I chased Dikembe Mutombo out of our locker room with a chair because he knocked 2 of my teeth out and didn't apologize. So he came to the locker room to talk to Patrick, and I told him, you can't come in here. And then in his Mutombo voice, he said, well, what are you going to do? And so I picked up a chair and I was like, I'm gonna show you. And he ran out of there. And so with the Kobe thing, rest in peace, it was just a part of the game back then that
Right.
You defend yourself, and he was a young guy making his mark. And I was at home, and well, not at home, but close to home in Los Angeles. That's where the game was at. And so I had family members there. So my ego was, on a high at that time. And so we got tied up a couple times. He threw a couple of elbows, and I tried to get the ref, Monty McCutcheon, who I knew in the CBA, to take care of it. And he gave me the emoji shrug, like, I don't know. I'm like, okay. And so I just told KB, I say, man, you do that again, I'm gonna take off. And he did it again, and I had to, let it be known that I'm not one to play with. I'm not one to let anybody throw elbows above the shoulders. And it wasn't just him; it was anybody. It was Michael. It can be any player. We're all men, and we all have a responsibility to our particular teams. And I had a responsibility as being, like Oak said, taking care of the guards and setting a standard for the Knicks that we are not, going to be challenged that way. Not that we were bullies, but we were going to play a certain brand of basketball each and every night. And if you interfered with that, then that was going to be a problem.
I love it, man. And I love the mentality. It's like you said, you're not bullies. You weren't out there instigating it, but
no, not at all.
You finished it, you defended yourself at all times. That's kind of how I think it should be, right? Don't start stuff. You don't need to be doing that, but you should be able to protect yourself and have some pride in your own self and for your team. Chris, you had an awesome career just going through the NBA after you had made it there, and you played over 540 games. I mean, it's just crazy at the professional level. It's not easy to do. And I'm sure you have a ton of memories, but what was your favorite arena? Was it Madison Square Garden, or what was your favorite arena outside of your home arena? I guess like it with New York, you've played everywhere. What was your favorite arena to play in, and why?
Well, my number one arena to play in was the Pavilion. All right,
okay.
So let's get that out there. Even though we had what the Pavilion hold? I think between maybe 12,000,
12,000 max,
12,800.
Something like that. Yeah, you're spot on.
12,800, and it was the loudest place on earth. And so Boise that's number one. of course, Maxwell Garden, but I loved going to the old Boston Garden, um, the Miami Arena was very nice because we would have, New York fans there, and they would have Miami fans, and they had those little clickers, and it was so loud, but I loved it. I played in Venezuela before, and that place was raucous. Indiana, the arena that Indiana Pacers played in. So, yeah, those are some of the top ones that I enjoyed. And then when I got traded to Toronto, at the time it was called the Eaton Center, and that place, with it being a fairly new franchise, those people were hungry for basketball.
So cool hearing it from you, man. Who was probably the top two players you played with and the top two players you played against during your career?
Of course, top two that I played with was Patrick and Vince Carter.
BC, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to the ones you played against, tell me why those were your top two. Like, what did they teach you in your career? Why were they your top two that you played with?
Well, it's not it's what we taught each other.
Okay.
Patrick and I didn't get along at first because he was a superstar. I was a new point guard coming in, and he was used to demanding and talking to people a certain way, and I wouldn't allow that because, like I said, I came there 25 as a young man. I mean, as young men. So we got off to a rocky start, but we learned how to respect each other and grow with each other, even though we didn't agree all the time. And that's what's missing. You don't have to agree with the person, but as long as you respect them. And so we found that common ground. And so I appreciate Beast. We call him Beast very much, and I wish him all the luck at Georgetown with this team. And if he's watching, Patrick, I'm sending them shoes to you soon to sign. Vince was a young lion when I got there, and we lived in the same condo, and he was right across the hall from me, and he didn't like hanging out or coming out, so we would just sit there and talk, in front of our door. And I'm like, Vince, I'm going out. I don't know about you, but I'm getting ready to go. He said, well, can you bring me something? I said, I'm not bringing you anything. You're going to come with me. And so gradually got him out of that shell of who he was, and because everybody wanted something from him when I got there. And I don't want anything from you. I just want you to be the best version that you can be, because I think you can be better than what you displayed. And he was already an all-star, but I told him I thought he can be better if he did certain things in his game. And so I enjoyed that part of it, because I became a mentor to Vince, as well as Alvin Williams, Mo P, Jerome Williams, Junkyard Dog, and all those guys. And then at the same time, I'm on that team with Dale Curry, and I was there when Steph and Seth was like 6 and 7 with my son, Jesse, and those kids at 11 years of age were shooting 3-pointers with their left hand because of how much work they were putting in the gym with their dads. And just to see the caliber of player that Steph and Seth has become from the tutelage of their father, Dell, is just remarkable. Now, the players that I've played against, I mean, I think, well, I'm not going to say the obvious, because I always say Michael and Allen Iverson, but I like to give a shout out to a couple of guys that don't get the credit that I think are two of the best point guards ever played the game, and that's Rod Strickland and Terrell Brandon. Rod out of DePaul, Terrell out of Oregon. Two of the most underrated, difficult guards to play against, because most times I have the advantage of strength, all right, and some of them quickness, but those guys had both, and they were crafty with the ball, so they made it more difficult for me to guard them than I would say Allen Iverson, because Allen had a streamline burst of speed and quickness. Those guys had that change of tempo. I use the analogy, a baseball analogy. Like, a baseball pitcher doesn't become great. He can just throw 100 miles an hour fastballs, but you can catch up to those.
Right.
But Nolan Ryan, Doc Gooden, and all those guys didn't become great. Randy Johnson? Those guys didn't become great until they was able to take something off the ball and change tempos, whether it's curveball, knuckleball, slider, and so on. So in basketball, once you learn how to change speeds and keep the defense, guessing, that's where you become great. And that's what made those two guys difficult. So I could have said Michael, Allen Iverson, Magic, all those guys, but I want to give Rod Strickland and Terrell Brandon a shout out because I enjoy competing against those two gentlemen.
I appreciate you doing that too. Those are names that we all know as well for basketball fans. So it's good to hear that too. And the reasoning behind it is super intriguing too for any of the athletes out there, young athletes especially. Hear what Chris just said. Like, it's not always just going 100 miles an hour all the time, changing tempo. And there's a lot to the game that makes it extremely, you don't have to be a big name player with all the spotlight, but if you can do those things, you can make it very, very difficult to defend. And you can take over games if you have those little nuances to the game. Changing tempo is a huge one, especially in the sport of basketball. So that's huge.
Change your pace.
Oh, it's such a good. I'm really appreciative that you just said that. Now, Chris, as we wrap up the conversation, I know your time is precious. I really just want to know, like, for all the athletes out there that are coming up and they want to, make it to the next level, they truly do. I just have a few questions for you. The first would be, what advice would you give them in regards to, like, what do they need to expect in regards to the work that goes into it? We just heard, like, your story. It wasn't just an overnight success. You were going as hard as you could, and then you went through the CBA and you had some moments, some ups and downs, and then you thought you were going to make it to the NBA with the Spurs, and then you had to go back through, and then you put the work in, and then you get over to the Nets. It was a journey. So with the younger athletes out there, what would you say they should be expecting in regards to the work that needs to be put in?
Well, the word I use is perseverance. Nothing's going to happen overnight, especially coming from a small school. Maybe so, I'm not sure. But for me, it's perseverance that if you think you're working hard, you can always work harder. You can always work harder because I'm a firm believer if you go into the gym, whether it's the weight room, whether it's on the track, whether it's on the court, whether it's you're shooting shots, if you're not drenching in sweat and you're not hurting, when you leave the gym, then you wasted a day. Because what you have to do is understand the pain that goes through being a professional and getting to that level. It has to hurt. It really has to hurt to where you're almost willing to give up. Because once you get through that, once you God willing, you get there, then it's easier. It became easier when I got there. It was the work and the pain of getting there that was the difficult part. Because you have to go in the gym, and I tell young kids that I train today, if you haven't shot 5,000 shots a day, then you're not shooting enough shots. Because everything is muscle memory. That arm and that hand has to literally hurt. And you have to hold it up. And then you go home, you eat right, you drink your liquids, and you wake up, you do it over again. And you do it over again. You do it over and over and over again to where there's no more pain. But you have to get through the pain first to really understand the process and the efforts and the perseverance that it's going to take to be a professional. Because once you get there, it's a business. It's a business. Now you work for someone. You work for a Fortune 500 company. So now you're and I also want to say this for the young kids coming up. High school, grade school, junior college, CBA, D-League, whatever it is. My dad told me this. When you wake up in the morning and you walk out that door, you are auditioning for someone. Someone is watching. So be on your best. Be your best version of you because someone is watching. First impression is the best impression. As a father, the one thing that the joy that myself and my ex-wife, Carla, will receive when we were living in Boise was that people will come up and tell us how cordial our kids are and how much of a pleasure they are to be around. As a parent, that's all you want to hear. That's all you want to hear. So when I'm telling these kids, when you walk out that door, you're auditioning for somebody, be the best version of you, and it'll take you a long way in life.
That's huge. That is absolutely huge. Last question I have for you, Chris, as we wrap up the interview, would be, who was the biggest influence in your life and why?
Wow, that's a hard one to really answer, but I had mom and dad, so it was both. Um, my dad was my go-to. How most guys, you have a friend that you call and throw things to see if it sticks against the wall or it comes back at you or whatever.
Yeah.
My dad was that guy. He was very articulate. He spoke a couple of languages. I just remember when I was younger, I would come home and I was doing my homework and I didn't understand what a word meant. And I would ask him, and oh God, that was the wrong person to ask, because he's not going to give you anything. He's going to point to the library and he's going to point to the dictionary. He said, "You see that book?" I was like, "Yes, sir." He said, "Go get that book and you find out what that word means. And when you come back, I want you to write a paragraph to tell me what it means." And so as I got older, I stopped coming home doing my homework. I started doing it at the library at school because I didn't want to have to perform under that pressure of writing a paragraph every time. But that was just the man that he was, that he didn't want anything given to us. And that taught me that I had to go out and earn what I wanted. Nothing's given to you in life. And then my mother, on the other hand, was just such a strong Christian presence in the home that she kept everybody together. We didn't have all the money, but she made sure that we were presented well in front of people, that the family stayed tight knit, and that if I didn't, there was morals. I couldn't get an earring. You're not supposed to wear a hat in the house. You don't curse. You're a gentleman. You're a young man, and present yourself that way. And so my dad is no longer here, rest in peace, but my mother's here. But his spirit lives in me every day. I enjoy them tremendously. And when people ask me, I've looked up to athletes. Ricky Henderson was my favorite baseball player. Enjoyed him tremendously. And basketball-wise, it was Walt Frazier and Dr. J. But my role model and the persons that I looked up to most was my mother and father.
So awesome, man. And I appreciate you sharing that as well. Those are some good life lessons, and you have amazing parents. So that's incredible. Yeah, man, it's been a blessing and an honor to have you on here, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is Chris Childs. I mean, I'm sitting here like giddy. I've been doing this show for 4 years, Chris, but I still get super excited when I get to talk to people like yourself. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining the show and being willing to share your story with us.
Hey, you're welcome, Shane. And anything that I can do in the future to help promote your show, you got my number. Don't hesitate.
Appreciate you, my man. And for everybody out there, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. And if you guys haven't subscribed to the show yet, please do so and share this with anybody that you think can benefit from Chris's words and Chris's story. Take care, guys, and we'll be coming to you next week with another interview. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review, it would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.